Hello, this is Jacob Merlet doing my service learning project presentation on Mercy Street. Now, some background information about Mercy Street is that it was founded in 2003 by the man named Carlton Obi. Some background information on Carlton Obi is that he received his Bachelor in Science in History and then went on to go get his certification in seminary where he would complete his education, and then from there he served 9 years in a ministry called Ministry of Alliance, where they went out to mentor towards those that would come in and be a different generation and different age. Currently, for the last 21 years, Carlton Obi has ran his nonprofit Christian organization called Mercy Street. Now, something famous that he put on his LinkedIn profile that I wanted to quote here is saying, "I dream of creating a multicultural, multi-ethnic, multi-generational movement of God's people that will work together for His glory and the good of this city." Now, I like this, how he portrays multicultural, multi-ethnic, and multi-generational. Because when I went out to serve at Mercy Street, I could see all three of those attributes carried on, just looking at everyone and how everyone was interacting with each other. Now, some other interesting facts that I found about the background of Mercy Street is that they have three cores that they try to focus their organization on: leadership, mentoring, and their sports academy. Now, I currently only did the sports academy and the mentoring part, so I can't portray much information about the leadership aspect of Mercy Street. But some other fun facts about Mercy Street is that they currently have 17 full-time employees and roughly around 30 plus part-time workers that help them out. Now, I personally had the privilege of meeting Rashad and Brian Roy, who will later be brought up in my presentation. And then currently, Mercy Street has expanded to own 2 locations as well. So they have their main place, and I was unable to go out and see what the second place is, but I heard from Brian Roy that they created a second facility. Now, for my first principle that I pulled from the management book is the Big 5 personality traits. And I found this in chapter 3 on page 60. Now, the Big 5 personalities are extroversion, negative affectivity, agreeableness, conscientiousness, and openness to experience. And then my definition of how I like to think of the Big 5 traits is, these are traits describing how a person reacts to different situations as a manager, or in the aspect of Mercy Street, how they interact with one another between student and faculty, or between student and student, or faculty against faculty. Now, like I said, when I interacted with many of the students, a lot of them seemed very extrovert, didn't seem down, and on their negative affectivity, none of them were like, "No, I don't want to go do this. No, I don't want to do that." Because a lot of them were open to teaching the youngers, student and faculty. Now, I found it very nice that they're all in agreeableness, because, literally, Demetrius would tell something to Josue, and Josue would go and do it, because they're in agreement on what needs to be done to perform at the sports academies. And conscientiousness. Now, I saw that they were always able to communicate well on what they wanted to happen. Because, literally on Saturdays, I was, surprised, because there would be, 6 games going on. And yet, somehow, they all always seemed under control. Even though there was over roughly like 300 people that went through it. And then openness to experience. Now, I think this is just about Mercy Street in a whole, how they just literally were open to try Sports Academy, because I don't think that was their first, because Mercy Street was originally trying to go off leadership and mentoring. And I mean, it's amazing how they were able to expand into Sports Academy, and some of the Sports Academy that they do is soccer, football, baseball, and basketball, and a couple more that they do. And then one point that I do want to hit on is that on my first visit to Mercy Street, Brian, I currently do not own a vehicle, so I was stuck at Mercy Street around like 4:30, and literally Brian was about to leave, and then I was like, I have to wait like 20-30 more minutes for my ride. Well, he offered me a ride back to DBU, and didn't even question why, didn't even ask, didn't even say you could wait. He was like very quick and very open to let me take a ride in his truck back up to DBU. Now, my second trait that I got from the book was organizational control, and I found this in chapter 11 on page 312. Now, what I perceive organization control is being able to set up events, set up your presentation in advance, and making sure that there are no errors within doing this and that it's ran smoothly. Now, also, organization control is being able to predict the unthinkable or the unreasonable tasks that might be at hand but are probably unlikely. Now, some things that I experienced were soccer fields. I mean, I personally was there, and from 8 a.m. to 4 a.m., 200 people just rushed in, and it was like Josue and Demetrius. They were telling people, you're at that field, you're at this field. And I was like so surprised because, you know, these people were so open. They, like, Jose and Demetrius had it under control of sending people to their rightful games, telling them when the next match for their team is. And it was just very surprising. Now, also, they had tasks for us when we got there at the soccer fields. Like me personally, when I did it my first time going out to the games, I was able to take out the trash for all the trash cans around the place, pick up like concessions from the baseball field and bring them over to the soccer field and help them with that. And I just helped them collect trash upon the gate, you know, just random stuff, but you know, it had a big impact on them, because literally the second time that I went out to the Sports Academy, they were telling me how helpful I was and like how crazy it was, how hard I worked. And I was like, I just did a little task here and there, but surprisingly it had a big impact on them. And then finally, where the untraditional things happen, and so I was witnessing a game from the 9 a.m. game, and I noticed that a team had 5 players in the 4U, but you needed 4. But 2 boys did not want to play on the team. So literally Josue went over to that game and got 2 people from the opposing team to play on that team, even though it was unconventional that they showed up but weren't able to play. They still made fit so that all the kids can have the enjoyment and the parents of playing the game. And finally, for my final point, I'm going to talk about communication. Now, I found this in chapter 16 on page 470. And I believe communication's definition is the sharing of information between 2 or more people where they can reach an understandable agreement upon an understanding on an agreement. Now, so for my final service hours, I worked at the after-school facilitation, and I was able to experience what effective communication and command looks like. So like during their study time after school, I noticed that Rashad and Chuck, they pulled off all their high school kids and they wanted them to give either a definition or real world application to telling them what integrity was. And literally, these kids were able to put it into simpler terms for your middle schoolers and your kids younger. Another situation that I saw where effective communication was in this was when in the photo, I'm sitting there with 4 boys, and the bench in front of us had a nest of fire ants on it. And literally, I was able to, and Chuck was able to effectively communicate with these kids. Do not sit on this bench because that is ants. A lot of them tried to sit on it, and we warned them and we made sure that they didn't sit on them. And now there was also another situation where we had 2 boys messing to each other towards the right in the photo. And literally, Chuck told both of the boys to break it up and one of them to go over and sit on the other side of the room. They didn't give a fight, they didn't give fussle. They literally moved, and everyone was able to pay attention to Rashad in the photo. And then finally, Rashad gave quite effective communication when he gave his real-world application on how he was tempted in his walk and how his integrity was being tested. And now he gave questions like, should we do this? And, it's pretty simple, but he made them shout out no, so that it can be applied to them, that they can be instilled in their brain that it should not be right, and to be able to uphold integrity during these times. Now, some current impacts that I got from Mercy Street personally, this gave me a deeper appreciation for my parents. Literally, I'm thankful for what they gave me, thankful for how I'm able to be in college, I'm thankful that I even had a roof over my head. Literally, I'm thankful that they gave me what I have received. And most kids are out there, I want. And when simply you realize how grateful you are with the items that you received already. Now, another thing that I found was it was grateful to be raised in a diverse household. I was raised with 2 Russian siblings, 3 Texan siblings, and 3 Asian siblings. So it was able to, going out and doing this was no issue with me because it's not unusual to interact with people of different race, not unusual to be friendly and to make friends with people. And I found it very nice and soothing that I thankfully was able to make friends within Mercy Street. And then a final impact that it did to me is that, like I said earlier, a small gesture of just taking out the trash, like an everyday task that I did not know how big of a help it had to them at Mercy Street and to Josue and Brian. Because literally, all I'm saying is, alright, I did your trash for 4 hours. Not that big. I thought I would be serving a lot more. But literally, the second time that they came around, they were so thankful. And I was like, I just did trash. That's not that difficult. Come on. And sometimes a small gesture from you can make a big impact on someone else. And then for my career, I think this is to never judge a book by its cover. Now, you look at Mercy Street and you're like, it's a rundown building. It's just a couple people trying to help kids. But when you go in there and you meet each person, each kid, there's a big impact that I had on each and every one that I interacted. And I don't even know it. So never judge a book by its cover. Some other ones I found was be humble and open-minded. Because literally, you should never jump into a situation and be like, yeah, I know this, I know that, I know this. Because you don't know the future. You can't predict it. You can try your best, but be open to whatever may happen and be humble about what your decision is and what happens to you. And finally, a final career impact of mine was be prepared for any situation. Now, I think this is correct with Mercy Street because literally we got faced with the issue of short kids. So be prepared in career, because you never know. Sometimes you might get stocks going down. Sometimes you might have a couple people quit in the job. So I find this to not procrastinate in my subjects and always have a backup plan or be ready if a situation happens. And that concludes my presentation of Mercy Street.